Hey everyone, I am Mikhaila Kate A. Minoro from BSN 2C of University of Rizal System, Taytay Campus. Today I am very excited to share my presentation from a YouTube video entitled The Evolution of Technology, A Journey with Jim Al-Khalili. This is not just a history lesson. It is a look at how human intelligence has shaped the world we live in today. We often think of technology as something that started with smartphone or the internet, but it goes back much further. In this presentation, we will travel through time to see how our ancestors first began to store and share information. We will look at how simple tools like lay and thread eventually led to the powerful digital systems we use in our modern hospitals. As a nursing student, I often reflect on why we study these things. Our profession is built on science and evidence. By understanding how information has evolved, we can better understand how medical data is handled today. We are the future of healthcare, and technology will be our greatest partner in saving lives and helping people recover. The binary code that you see on the screen, the ones and the zeros, represent the language of computers. But before we had these electronic codes, we had other systems that were just as clever. We will explore the minds of visionaries who saw patterns in nature and turned them into useful inventions for all the humanity. I hope that by the end of this presentation, you will have a deep appreciation for the gadgets that you use every day. We are a part of a long chain of human progress that started thousands of years ago. Let's take our first step by asking a very simple but deep question. What is information? What exactly is information? We use this word every single day, but we rarely stop to define it. Information is much more than just the words in a book or the news on your social media feed. According to Jim Al-Khalili, information is a fundamental block of the entire universe, just like energy or matter. One of the most important things to understand is that information helps create order from disorder. Think about a library where all the books are thrown on the floor in a random pile. That is disorder. When we use a system to organize those books by subject or author, we are using information to create order. Without information, everything in the universe would be chaotic and random. Information exists in many different places and forms. It is stored inside the complex neural networks of our human brains, which allows us to learn and remember. It is also the basis of all human communication, from a simple wave of the hand to a very long research paper. Even the natural world, information is present in the way crystals grow or how planets move. In our field of nursing, information is our most valuable tool. Every time we check a patient's heart rate, blood pressure, or oxygen levels, we are gathering information. We take these raw numbers and turn them into a clear picture of the patient's health. Without this data, we would be working in the dark and might make mistakes. Just as computers needs a steady stream of data to function, a nurse needs accurate information to create a nursing care plan. We use information to decide which medicine to give and when to call the doctor. Now, information is the invisible thread that connects our knowledge to the physical care that we give to our patients. Writing. Our journey through history starts in the 3000 BCE in a region called Mesopotamia. This was the birthplace of the first writing system developed by a group of people known as the Sumerians. Before this invention, if you wanted to remember something, you had to memorize it. If the person with the memory died, the information was lost forever. The Sumerians solved this problem by using a clay tablets. They would take wet clay and use a sharp stick called a stylus to press marks into the surface. These marks are known as cuneiform. This was the first time in history that human thoughts were saved on a physical object that could last hundreds of years and that could even surpass a human life. At the beginning, this writing was very simple. They used pictographs, which are little drawings of real things. So if they wanted to record 3 sheep, they would draw 3 sheep. Just as their society grew, they needed to talk about things they couldn't draw, like love, justice, or sickness. To fix this, they started using symbols to represent sounds instead of just objects. For example, they could combine the symbol for an eye, a part of the body, and a deer, which is an animal, to make the sound of the word idea. Diba? I plus deer, idea. This was a huge leap forward because it allowed humans to write down complex stories, long laws, or even medical recipes. In nursing, this reminds us the power of documentation. We have a saying that documentation is the lifeblood of nursing. Just as the Sumerians recorded their history in clay, we record our patients' history in their charts. We don't write it down If we don't write it down clearly, that information could be lost. And the next nurse on shift might not know what the patient needs. So think about how much we rely on written orders from doctors. Without the knowledge or the technology of writing, we would have to remember every single dosage and instruction by heart. Writing is the tool that brings safety and permanence to our medical work. It allows us to pass important knowledge from one ship to the next without any errors. Next is the Jacquard loom. Let's travel to the year 1804 in France. During this time, the silk industry was very big, but it was also very difficult. Weaving beautiful patterns into the fabric was a slow process that had to be done by hand. So it took a long time to train a weaver, and if they made one small mistake, the whole piece of silk was ruined. And so a man named Joseph Marie Jacquard changed everything by inventing the Jacquard loom, as you can see on the screen. This was a machine that could weave complex designs all by itself. Paano ba yun? Diba? But how did the machine know the pattern to make? The secret was in punch cards. Stiff pieces of paper with holes punched in specific spots. Ito, each hole in the card told the machine which thread to lift and which thread to leave down. This was a revolutionary idea because it meant the instructions for the design were separate from the machine itself. If you wanted to make a different pattern, you didn't need a new machine. You just need a new set of cards. This was actually the first time a machine followed a program. These punch cards were the very first version of a computer's memory. It proved that human intelligence could be turned into a code that a machine could understand and follow perfectly every single time. In our nursing practice, we also use programs or protocols. So, for example, when we perform CPR, we follow a specific set of steps. Check the scene, check for a pulse, start compressions, and so on. These steps are like the holes on the jacquard loom or the jacquard card. They guide us so that we do the job correctly, even when we are under a lot of stress. The jacquard loom taught us that using a system makes work more efficient and reduces human error. Now today we have many machines in the hospital that are programmed to help us, like infusion pumps that deliver medicines at a set rate. And we owe this a lot to this old weaving machine for teaching us how to automate complex tasks. Imagine, imagine living in a world where there were no phones, no internet, and no electricity. Let's discuss the communication before technology. Before the 1800s, this was the reality of everyone. There were no phones, there were no internet, and there were no electricity. If you wanted to send a message to a friend in another town, you had to write a letter and pay someone to carry it there. Communication was limited by the physical speed of a human or an animal. If a message had to go through the ocean, it had to travel by ship. In those days, a ship could take 3 months to reach its destination. This meant that by the time that you received a letter, the news inside it was already old. And families were often separated for years with no way to know if their loved ones were safe or healthy. This lack of communication made it very hard to manage big groups of people or share new ideas. So if a doctor in one country discovered a new cure for a disease, it might take years for that information to reach doctors in other parts of the world. Thousands of people could die simply because the information didn't travel fast enough. For a nurse in those times, the job was very lonely. If there was an emergency, you couldn't just pick up a phone or call for a backup. You had to rely only on what you had with you. The world felt very disconnected, and help was always far away. Today, we can communicate with our classmates and teachers in an instant. We can look up medical research from the other side of the planet in seconds. And this speed has changed nursing forever. We are now part of a global community where we can share life saving information as soon as it is discovered. Next is let's talk about the telegraph era, Morse code. The great speed barrier of communication was finally broken in the 1800s with the invention of the telegraph. But sending electricity through a wire is not enough. You need a language that the electricity can speak. This is why Samuel Morse created Morse code. Now, Morse code is a brilliant system that uses only two signals: a short, a dot, and a long dash. By combining these dots and dashes in different ways, Morse created a code for every letter of the alphabet, as you can see on the screen. For example, the letter A is a dot and a dash, right? While the letter S is three dots. One of the most important things about Morse code is that it is very efficient. Morse looked at which letters we use the most in the English language. He found that E is the most common. So he gave it the shortest code. 'Di ba? Isang dot lang siya, as you can see. Ang E, isang dot lang. This saved a lot of time for the person sending the message. This was the first time human language was digitized. It turned our words into series of pulses that could travel across the world at the speed of light. Suddenly, a message that used to take months to cross the ocean could be sent and received in just few minutes. In nursing, we also use a lot of short codes, right? So when we are in a hurry, we don't say as much as needed. We say PRN. We don't say nothing by mouth. We say NPO. Yung mga abbreviations na to, um, our version of Morse code. They help us give important information to medical team quickly and clearly. As what we all know, clear communication is a matter of life and death in a hospital. Just as a telegraph operator must be very careful not to mix up a dot and a dash. A nurse must be very careful not to mix up medical terms. Morse code reminds us that accuracy and speed are both necessary when we are handling important data. In the 1860s, a scientist named James Clerk Maxwell came up with a very strange and famous thought experiment. He imagined a tiny demon or a tiny creature that could see individual molecules. This demon sat on a small door between two rooms filled with gas. The demon's job was to sort the molecules. So when a hot molecule came near the door, the demon would let it into the right room. When a slow, cold molecule came near, the demon would let it into the left room. After a while, one room would be very hot and the other would be very cold. This is a big deal because the demon created order just by using its knowledge, its information. This experiment showed that information is not just a thought. It has a physical effect on the world. It proved that knowing something can actually help you control energy and matter. For a very long time, scientists were confused by this. Kasi, bakit nga ba? Ano bang meron dun? They thought it might be a magic. But eventually, they realized that the demon was actually doing work by processing information. This idea paved the way for modern physics, the way we understand how computers process data. As nurses, we are a lot like Maxwell's demon. We stand at the door of our patient's health. We look at a lot of confusing data. For example, lab results, symptoms, vital signs, and we sort it through. We use our information our nursing education, to create a plan that creates or brings order and health back to the patient. Knowledge is what gives us power to help others. Without our education, we would just be looking at a messy room of molecules. But with the right information, we can bring healing and balance to a patient's life. Information is truly a physical force for good in the hands of a trained nurse. Now we arrive at the year 1936, the time of Alan Turing. Turing was a mathematical genius who is now known as one of the fathers of the modern computer. He didn't just build a machine, he came up with the logic that makes all machines work. Turing imagined a universal machine that could do any task as long as you gave it the right instructions. He realized that any complex problem in the world could be broken down into very simple steps. He used the binary system, the language of ones and zeros, to make this happen. In Turing's world, everything is either on or off, yes or no, 1 or 0. This might mean too simple, but when you put millions of these choices together, you can create a computer that can fly a plane, fly a game, or calculate the perfect dose of medicine for a sick child. Turing's work was used during World War II to break secret codes and save millions of lives. He proved that computation, the act of processing information, is the powerful tool a human can have. Today, every laptop, every tablet, and heart monitor uses the logic that Alan Turing invented. In our nursing career, we rely on computers to keep our patients safe. We use them to check for drug interactions to make sure that two different medicines won't hurt the patient if given together. These computers are following Turing's logical steps to protect the people under our care. But remember, while a computer is very fast at math, it does not have intuition or compassion. It can give us the ones or zeros, but only a nurse can look at a patient's face and know if they are truly feeling better. In 1948, another brilliant man named Claude Shannon published a paper that changed the world forever. He worked at Bell Labs and created something called information theory. His goal was to find a way to measure information, just like we measure weight in kilograms and height in centimeters. Shannon invented the bit, which stands for binary digit. A bit is the smallest possible piece of information. It is simply a choice between two things, like a 1 or a 0. By creating the bit, Shannon allowed us to quantify exactly how much data is in a photo, a song, or a heartbeat. His work also helped us understand how to send information through noise. Imagine trying to talk to a friend in a very loud room. That is noise. Shannon's math showed us how to make sure a message gets through clearly, even if there's a lot of interference. Because of Claude Shannon, we have the internet, high definition TV, and crystal clear phone calls. He figured out how to compress data so that it takes up very little space but still sounds perfect. He is the reason you can fit thousands of songs or photos on your smartphone. In the hospital, we use Shannon's idea every time we look at a digital X-ray or an MRI scan. These machines take a patient's body and turn it into a millions of bits of information. This allows doctors to see inside the body with amazing detail, helping us to find problems that were once invisible. As nursing students, we are living in the information age that Shannon helped build. We are constantly surrounded by data, and our challenge is to learn how to manage all this information so that we can use it to become better, more efficient healthcare providers. Now, as we come to the modern day, we must realize a very important truth. Information is physical. It might seem like data just floats around the cloud, but it always has a physical home. It lives in the tiny transistors of a computer chip, in the magnetic pulses of a hard drive, or in the chemical bonds of our DNA. Nature is the greatest information processor of all. Every atom in the universe contains information about its state. Every cell in your data contains a massive library of information in your DNA. This code tells us our body how to grow, how to breathe, and how to fight off infections. This means that technology and biology are actually very closely related. A computer uses silicon and electricity to process information, while your body uses carbon and chemicals. Both systems follow the same rules of logic and physics to maintain life and order. As nurses, as nurses, we are essentially information managers. For the human body, when a person has a fever, their body is giving us data that something is wrong. When we give a vaccine, we are giving the immune system new information how to recognize a virus. Understanding that information is physical helps us treat the human body with more respect. We aren't just looking at flesh or even bone. We are looking at a masterfully designed information system. And our job to help the system stay in balance so the patient can live a healthy life. To wrap up this presentation, we have one final scientific insight. Scientists found that deleting information actually produces a tiny bit of heat. This is called the Laundress principle. It proves that even the act of forgetting or erasing has a physical cost in our universe. This shows that information is a real thing with real consequences. From the clay tablets of the Sumerians to the binary code of Alan Turing, humans have always fought to keep and share what they know. This long history is what allowed us to build the modern world we see today. As I finish this presentation, I want to share a final reflection from my heart as a nursing student here at the University of Rizal System, Taytay Campus. Technology will continue to change. We will get faster computers, smarter robots, and new medicines. But the one thing that will never change is the need for human care. A computer can give a diagnosis, but it cannot hold a patient's hand when they are scared. A machine can monitor a heartbeat, but it cannot feel the joy of a new mother holding her baby. We use technology as our tool, but we use our hearts as our guide. Thank you very much for your time and listening to my presentation. I am Mikhaila Kate A. Minoro from BSN 2C.